from the expression. So the first expression we have is 2x squared plus 4x. So what I usually like to start with first is look at your numbers. And then you're going to look at your variables after. So basically a common factor is just a specific number that can be divided by two numbers. So let's start with our first one. We have 2x squared plus 4x. So we're going to look at our numbers first. So 2 and 4. What's the biggest number that we can divide 2 and 4 by? 2. So again, start with my numbers. I can divide 4 and 2 by 2 because they give me whole numbers. Now I'm going to look at my variable part. So I have x squared and I have x. What is common between x squared and x? That's it. X. The reason why it's not x squared is because my x doesn't have an exponent of 2. Okay? So when you're looking at your variables, you always take the one that has the lowest exponent. So the one that has the lowest exponent is your common factor. Okay, now let's go on to my next one. I have x squared and x. What is the biggest common factor between x squared and x? Pardon? Okay, 1, that's my number. How about my variable? X. So again, I have x squared and x. I take the one with the lowest exponent, and that is my common factor. So now the next one I have is x squared, x squared and 3x. So any variable that doesn't have a number in front of it is automatically 1. So what's the biggest factor between 1 and 3? 1, right? Because if I say 3, when I take 1 and divide it by 3, I get a decimal, and I don't want that to happen. So when we have a common factor of just 1, I don't have to write it out. Now let's look at my variables. What is my greatest common factor between x squared and x? Just x. And then we have 2 more. We have 3x squared and 2x. Is there a common factor between 3 and 2? No, so it's just going to be 1. Yeah, 1, and then between x squared and x is going to be x. Okay, and last but not least, we have 2x squared plus 6x. So we start with our numbers 2 and 6. What's my biggest common factor, Brooklyn? 2. And between x squared and x, what is it going to be? X. Thank you, Omar. X. So now, because I take out that common factor, I need to figure out what am I going to be left with inside of my bracket. So let's take the first one. So I said 2x was my common factor, okay, which means I have to divide everything in 2x squared plus 4x by 2x. So again, let's start with our numbers. What's 2 divided by 2? 1. What's x squared divided by x? Think about your exponent laws. Or x, right? X to the power of 1. Now what's 4 divided by 2? 2. And x divided by x just gives me 1. So what's left in the bracket is 2x. It's 2x times x plus 2. Now, in order to determine if what you did is right, you can FOIL back the 2x into my bracket to double check your answer. So let's see if we did it right. What is 2x multiplied by x? Okay. And what's 2x times 2? So as you can see, we got the same thing back, which means I factored out the correct common factor. Any questions so far? Is this pretty straightforward for now? Okay. So now we're going to get to some examples. So there are 3 types of factoring. We have the monomial factoring, binomial factoring, and then we have factoring by grouping. So that's what we're going to do last. So the first one is the easy one. So it's monomial factoring, where we have to look for the biggest common factor. So I have 4x plus 28. So what's the biggest common factor between 4x and 28, Olivia? 4. So I'm going to take out a 4, which means I divide everything here by 4. So what's going to be in my bracket? Yeah. But I want the biggest one possible.
Is the biggest one have to be
Pardon?
Does it have to be
Not necessarily all the time. Yeah. Brooklyn? Yep.
So it would be 4 and then the bracket
Mhm.
x.
Yep.
And then 28 divided by 4.
Yep.
Which is 7. So
Yep.
that would be plus
Perfect. Yep. So you're left with the bracket is 4 times x plus 7. So the reason being is because 4x divided by 4, I do my numbers first. 4 divided by 4 is just 1. And x is left by itself, which is why I have the x over here. And then 28 divided by 4 gives me 7, hence why I have my 7 over here. So that's why I have 4 times x plus 7. Now my next one is 3x plus 17. Is there any common factor, or is this the most simplified it is? Simplified? Okay. Now the next one, I have 6x plus 32y. Okay. So look at your numbers first. What am I going to factor out? So I have 6 and 32. Brooklyn.
6.
Can I divide 32 by 6? Does it give me a whole number? Olivia? 2? Okay. So let's take out the 2. Okay, because if I do 32 divided by 3, I don't get a whole number, right? No. So between x and y, because they are different variables, the only common factor I have is 2, which means I have to divide everything here by 2. So what's 6 divided by 2?
3.
3. So I'm left with 3x plus, what's my last value going to be? Brooklyn?
16y.
Yep, 16y. Yep. Because if I take 3, can I divide it by 17? No. And then I don't have a variable with 17, so I can't even factor out a variable. Nope. So you just leave it as 3x plus 17. Now the last one's a bit more tricky because we have three different terms. So I have 8x cubed minus 6x squared y squared plus 4x squared y. So again, we're going to look at our numbers first. So let's look at 8, 6, and 4. What is the biggest common factor that can be divided by all three of those numbers? Brooklyn? 2. Okay. Now let's look at my variables. So I have x cubed here. I have x squared y squared. And I have x squared y. What is my common variable, Abby? X to the power of, what's the lowest exponent there? Pardon? 2. So it's going to be x squared. Okay. Because x3 has 3 x's, so x squared can be a common factor. So y is not a common factor because 8x cubed does not have a y. So that means I need to divide everything by 2x squared. So let's start with my numbers first. What's 8 divided by 2? 4. Okay. What's x cubed divided by x squared? Just x, just one x. Okay. Next one, 6 divided by 2? 3. X squared divided by x squared is just 1, because you're dividing something by itself. And then we're just left with y squared. Now, last but not least, who can tell me what my last term is going to be? 2y. So this would be my most simplified answer right here. Yeah.
If you wrote negative 3xy squared, would that be wrong?
Negative 3xy squared? Yeah, it would be wrong. Because whenever you have x squared divided by x squared, it's the same as dividing a number by itself. This is always going to give you 1.
So,
So any questions about this so far before I move on?
yeah, but it would be x plus
Yes, Elisa?
So you see x squared
Mhm.
divided by x squared is x.
It's just 1. Because you're dividing something by itself, and that's always going to give you 1. Okay. So the next type of factoring we have is called binomial factoring. All this means is that we need to make sure that these brackets are the same. Okay, make sure that these brackets are going to be the same. So, are both brackets the same in the first one? I have 3x times y minus z minus 2 times y minus z. Are my brackets the same? Yeah. So my first factor is going to be y minus z. And my next factor is going to be whatever is left over from 3x and negative 2. So you would just write it as 3x minus 2. And that would be considered factored. So you make sure your brackets are the same. Okay? So that means because y minus z and y minus z are both the same bracket, that means they're a factor of 3x and negative 2. So you just write it as one bracket, and then 3x and minus 2 combine to become the other factor. Okay, with that said, what do you guys think the next one's going to look like? Brooklyn.
8 plus you use the bracket,
Mhm.
and then 7, take away 2x.
Yep, perfect.
So that's the whole thing.
Yeah, that's it. So your first bracket is going to be whatever these guys are, and then your second bracket is going to be these two guys combined. Okay, and for question C, are my brackets the same? No, they're not the same. Why aren't they the same? Yeah. So 3m, so 3m minus 5 is not the same as 5 minus 3m. Okay? So in order for those two to become the same, what do you think I need to factor out from one of them? Olivia? Nope. Nope. So I need to make them the same. So in the first one, 3m minus 5, is 3m positive or negative? Positive. What's my 5? Okay. No, you have to take out a specific number. How do I get something to become positive if it's negative? I divide by what? What do I have to take out? Because factoring means I have to take out a specific number. So I have to divide everything by that number. Yeah. So I need to factor. So this is going to be a big example over here. I need to factor -1 from 5 minus 3m. So when I factor out my -1, that means I have to divide everything here by -1. So what would 5 divided by -1 be? Okay, what's -3m divided by -1? So now I can just rewrite it as 3m minus 5. Does that look the same now? Because I need to make 5 minus 3m, I have to make it the same as 3m minus 5. Okay? I can't factor in this question yet because 3m minus 5 and 5 minus 3m, they're not the same. So now that we have that, I have 2x times 3m minus 5 minus -3. I have to multiply the -1 because I factored it out, times 3m minus 5. So what does my middle term become then? Instead of -3 on the outside, it becomes what? What's -3 times -1? Okay, so what is my final answer going to be then? What would my factored answer be? I'm going to continue this on next page. What's my final factor going to be? Olivia?
3m minus 5 in one bracket, the other bracket is 2x.
Okay. So let's see if you guys can figure out another one. So I'm going to give you guys this. So I want you guys to factor 2x times x minus 1 plus 2 times 1 minus x. So remember, x minus 1 and 1 minus x, they're not the same. So we have to make them the same. And how would we make them the same? How would I make them both the same? So again, x minus 1 and 1 minus x is not the same. Olivia, what do we do? From? Yeah. So I need to factor a negative 1 from 1 minus x, which means I'm dividing everything by negative 1. So I'm factoring out, this is me factoring out my negative 1. Now, what's 1 divided by negative 1, since I factored that out? What's 1 divided by negative 1? Okay, what's negative x divided by negative 1? Positive x. So now I do 2 times negative 1, which is negative 2. And this is the same thing as saying x minus 1. So what's my final factored form? Cynthia?
X minus 1
Mhm.
in one bracket, and then 2x minus 2 in the other one.
Yep. It's probably going to get a bit getting used to this. So whenever two brackets are not the same, you can always try factoring a negative 1 from the second one to see if it ends up working. Yeah.
How is it 2x minus 2?
Because when I take out the negative 1, I have to multiply the 2 that was already here by negative 1 as well. So 2 times negative 1 gives me negative 2. Yep.
X minus 1, we just switch it around.
Yeah, because I had negative 1 plus x, so I can just rewrite it as x minus 1. Yeah, Ashton?
How did you go from the negative 1 plus x to, and then you change it back to x minus 1?
Because my x is positive, right? So x minus 1, my x is still positive and my 1 is still negative, which is why I can rewrite it like that. Because you always want the variable first and then the constant at the end. Yep. And then the last factoring method that we have is called factoring by grouping, which means I have to split my polynomial expression into two halves. So I have ax minus by plus xb minus ya. So this the first one's a bad example because it's not already organized for you. So I either want to get the x's together beside each other and the y's together beside each other, or the b's and vice versa. So I can technically rewrite this as ax plus xb minus by minus ya. So let's look at half of it first. So we're going to look at this half. So we're going to ignore negative by minus ya. We're going to focus on ax plus xb. So between those two terms, what is my common factor? X, right? Which means I divide everything by x. So what is left over in my bracket? A plus b. Now, we're going to focus on my second bracket. So it's going to have negative by and negative ya. So what is the common factor between those two terms? Y and what else? Yep, negative y, because the negative is in front of the both terms. So I have to divide everything by negative y. So what's left in my bracket? B plus a. Because negative divided by negative gives me a positive. And based off what we did on the top, how else can I write b plus a? I can write it as a plus b. Okay. So are both of my brackets the same now? Yes. So what's my factored form going to look like?
X equal to y
Hmm.
times a plus b.
Yep. Times a plus b. Olivia? Because when I factored out my negative y, that means I'm dividing every single term by a negative. So you get a negative divided by a negative, which gives me a positive answer.
Would it matter if you put A plus B and then
A plus b. No, doesn't matter. You can have a plus b then x minus y, or x minus y, a plus b. Doesn't matter. Yep.
Why did we change it from B plus A to A plus B?
Mhm. When do we change it?
Yeah, is there like a?
So the only reason why I can change from a plus b and b plus a is because b and a are both what? Are they positive or negative? Positive. So whenever you have two numbers that are positive, like say 2 plus 3, I can still write 3 plus 2 because it gives me 5 still. Right? So that's the reason. Only when it's addition can you switch them like that. Yes? No. You can put a plus b first or x minus y first. Doesn't matter. Okay, let's see if you guys can do the next one. So I have t squared minus tr plus 4r minus 4t. So let's look at, do you want me to rearrange anything or is it okay the way it is? You don't have to. What do you notice about t squared and tr? What do they both have in common? T. And then my second half has both 4, so I can leave it as is. So let's focus on t squared and tr. You guys said my common factor was what? T. So I divide both of these guys by t. What's t squared divided by t? T. And what's negative tr divided by t? Minus r. Perfect. Now let's focus on 4r and minus 4t. What is the common factor between those two terms? 4. Which means I divide everything by 4. So what is 4r divided by 4? Okay, next. Minus t. Okay, so I have one bracket that has t minus r, and I have one bracket that is r minus t. What do I need to do with my second bracket? What do I have to factor out to make it t minus r? Olivia? Negative 1. So I need to factor negative 1 to get it to be t minus r. So I get t times t minus r plus 4. And because I factor out a negative 1, I have to multiply my positive 4 by negative 1. And I get negative r plus t. So I get t times t minus r. Positive 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. And what is another way I can write negative r plus t? Brooklyn? Yeah, t minus r. So what is my final factored form then? Olivia?
T minus r more bracket and T minus 1.
Yep, perfect. Okay, we're gonna do C together, and then D and E you guys will do on your own, and I'll come around and check your answers after we're done example C.
First year was literally the half day. And then I changed it to the reason. No, because I kept forgetting.
Okay. Now let's do my last one. So my last one I have is 3x squared y minus 6x squared minus 2y plus y squared. So is this fine the way it is, or do you want me to move stuff around? Okay. So if it's fine, let's start with our first set of terms. So we have 3x squared y minus 6x squared. What is my common factor between those? Olivia? X squared. And how about my numbers? 3 and 6? 3. So I'm dividing everything here by 3x squared. So let's start with the first one. So 3 divided by 3 obviously gives me 1. X squared divided by x squared also gives me 1. So what am I left over with? Just y. Now the next one, I have negative 6 divided by 3. Negative 2. And x squared divided by x squared is just 1. So I can just leave it like that. So now let's focus on negative 2y and y squared. So what is the common factor between negative 2y and y squared? Someone said it. Y. So we'll do plus y. So I'm going to divide each one by y. So what's negative 2y divided by just y? Negative 2. And y squared divided by y? Plus y. Are my brackets the same? Yes. Why are they the same? Yep. So my y is positive and my 2 is negative. So it's the same thing as saying y minus 2. I mean, you can choose to move it if you want, or not to, but just make sure you get the correct solution at the end. So what's my final factored form then? Yep. Perfect. Y minus 2? Because what is the sign in front of my y over here? Positive. What's the sign in front of my 2? Right, so I can just write it as y minus 2. So you guys can do question D and E on your own, and I'll come and check. And then if you guys have any questions about the homework, you guys can come up and ask me, and I'll do that as well. So that's pretty much it for factoring. So I'm